Welcome to From Story to Impact, where we talk about the stories of our lives. I'm your host, Steve Gallegos, and I'm super excited that you're here with us today. This, so you know, is the official show of the Voices of Impact Awards, which was created to celebrate the voices that inspire humanity. Now, what does that mean? When we say voices, we're referring to people like you who've had struggles, you've had challenges, and you've also had some joyful, epic moments and experiences. And from these experiences, you've learned some important and valuable lessons that can help others do better and be better in their personal lives, in their relationships, in their careers, and also in their business endeavors, because it encompasses everything, right? Now, when we speak of stories, I know that we all have a favorite story. Some of us more than one. Like I have hundreds of favorite stories. We all have stories that inspire us and motivate us, stories that make us laugh and cry, even stories that make us dance and sing. It's these stories that connect us as one human to another. It's how we relate to one another. It's how we learn about our past and also how we envision our future. And so knowing this and knowing that there didn't exist a platform to celebrate these stories, we created the platform, the Voices of Impact Awards, for you to share your inspiring stories, and we're making it a big deal. It's a big celebration, and it's all about you. To learn more and to apply for your chance to be a finalist and possibly win $20,000 in cash and a book publishing deal from Morgan James Publishing, go to our website, voiawards.com, and register to become one of our storytellers. And speaking of storytellers, our studio guest today is Mr. Troy Rice. He's someone that I call a friend. He's also a husband, although not to me. He's a father, also not to me. He's a serial tech entrepreneur, that is for me, brain health coach and speaker, Mr. Troy Rice. People call him a big kid, as you'll soon see here during the interview, because he spends his time also helping people lead extraordinary lives with their exceptional brains. And he gets into it in just such a fascinating and fun way that you know, people said, you're just a big kid having fun, aren't you, with all this serious stuff, scientific stuff? And the answer is yes. Troy is also an entrepreneur. He's a founder of 2 agricultural companies, tech companies. And so he's doing great in those arenas as well. But here's something that you'll learn about Troy, maybe you didn't know already, is that growing up, while he was playing sports, he was bullied in school. And so he took to sports to kind of find himself, find his own identity and make a place for himself. And during that experience, he experienced several concussions, 2 of which were diagnosed as level 3 concussions. Now, this is serious stuff. And so as a result of these injuries, Troy has spent most of his life feeling like he can't remember anything. Like, for example, he can't remember that he owes me $25,000. I keep trying to remind him, and he just says, Steve, I really can't remember. And so anyway, these memories seem to always slip from his grasp. So fast forward 10 years from these injuries, with a will and determination to lead life on his own terms. Yes, and that's why we get along so well. He discovered his 2 major passions are education and health. And so now he spends his time speaking on these topics to schools, universities, as a growth mindset coach, and also as a certified brain health coach for Daniel Amen Clinics. I'm super excited to introduce him and share him with you today, Mr. Troy Rice. Welcome to the studio, Troy.
Steve, thanks for having me. And wow, what an intro. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You deserve it, just like you wrote it, right?
I appreciate that. And yes, have some fun for sure.
Listen, our job here is to make you the hero, and it didn't take very much to do, because that's actually what you are. You're out there doing your thing, but you're doing it not just for yourself and your beautiful family, but you're doing it for the world, right? Your agricultural tech companies are not just to help you live a better life, but to help resolve some big social issues. And we'll discuss those in a few minutes here, because we're going to give the audience the full picture of who you are and what you're doing. So they're going to fall in love with you like my wife and I have with you and your family. You guys are just incredible. And so I'm so grateful for you that you've given the time of your day to be here and to share with us. And we're going to talk about your Brain Maverick story. And so let's get right into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
Very good. Troy, where are you right now in the world? Where are you sitting?
Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is not typically a place people love to live all year round. It gets a little freezing here, but all the less, it's still a beautiful city.
Wonderful. I grew up in Chicago, and so I know that, the Midwest winters are really, really bad. But you being right on the lake, right? You guys are right, very close, much closer to the lake, and so it really gets windy and chilly there. And yeah, I don't envy you. Although we're in Denver right now, and we're just moving into our winter season, but it's nowhere near as cold or miserable as it is in the Midwest. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, well, I've grown up here my whole life, but I like to think of it as opportunity because there are so many family and friends that we have that don't even see snow, nor do they play in it. And so every time family visits, like that's the number one thing their kids say is like, when are we going to go back to Michigan and play in the snow? And so there are a lot of benefits, I think, that go untalked about if you're somebody that loves to do that. And I love playing in the snow. We'll probably also dig a little bit into like cold therapy and stuff, which I love to practice as well. So it has its benefits. Now, with that said, I do travel down to Destin, Florida. We have family down there at least twice a year. So I do get away and and enjoy some of the warm weather as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Just as an aside, and speaking of Destin, Florida, was your family impacted by this recent hurricane?
Not as much. The one last year they were. I think it was last year that we had the big storm that came through that area, and it was more in their particular area where they had to actually take cover. But this one, not as much. But I know that there are a lot of families that are struggling down there. So prayers and thoughts to the families that are going through that right now.
Absolutely. We feel for all those families, everybody that, lost a loved one or homes or property or businesses. I know it's devastating. And, but one thing we know is that the human brain, and Troy, you're an expert on the human brain, it allows us to kind of regroup and right. I don't know, what is it? A survival tactic in our brains that just allows, because humans have been exposed to and undergone tragedies for eons, right? Since the beginning of time, through the dinosaur period. And, I'm not a scientist, so I'm just recalling these times from my life, from memory, right? No, truly, audience, I didn't live in the dinosaur period, although sometimes my wife thinks I'm a little slow at things. And so what is it, Troy, about our structure? What is it about that piece of flesh between our brains? I don't know, am I saying it right? Is it a piece of flesh between our ears that allows us to do so many wonderful things and to recover and to create and to, just live such an amazing life? What's your take on that?
Yeah. And so, one thing that a lot of us aren't taught growing up as kids, whether it's in the home or at school, is how to tap into that. And by that, I mean, most specifically, like your subconscious, because an average human has anywhere between 75 to 80,000 thoughts a day, which is crazy to think about, right? And then 90% of those are repetitive because your subconscious mind is working without you even knowing about it. Most particularly when you breathe, right? Nobody, unless you're really in tune with your breath, you don't think about it. It works for you. Your muscles work for you. Your heart works for you. And so one thing that I wish was taught in school, and one thing we're trying to do a little bit better of teaching, is to really care about your brain, because it is magnificent, powerful, and it's vulnerable. I mean, your brain is as soft as butter, which is quoted by Dr. Daniel Amen quite often. And so we have the skull that's protecting it. But if we don't grow up thinking about and caring about our brain, and you alluded to it a little bit about my history as a child, we damage our brain, and we continue to damage our brain. And a female doesn't actually fully develop her prefrontal cortex, which in essence is the developing, learning, memory, retention, everything that you need to actually grow yourself in your mind, doesn't fully develop until age 25 for women. Yeah. And it's even later for men. And so what happens is we go through our childhoods, and if we aren't thinking about that, we do things like play physical sports, we get concussions, we might engage in activities that are not ideal for our brain, like call it, drugs or alcohol or whatever you want. What happens is we continually deplete our reserves before we even have fully developed a chance for our brains to be optimal. So what does that look like? Well, that looks like waking up one day and not really understanding where you want to be, where you are. Does it match what you care about? Are you depressed? Like all of those factors kind of align. And you mentioned it earlier too, which I do have a strong passion in food health and agriculture. And I believe the two are very, very closely related. And we're starting to see a lot more of that come out in scientific research and in the media about the links between diet, brain health, and gut health, and all of that. And so all of it has its place. And dating back to like ancient times, back then, like that's how we lived, right? You woke up and you only had to think about surviving in the environments that you lived with. And there's a cool story I love to share. So I'm Native American roots, Cherokee tribe actually. And so there's a story I like to share, which is like parents of Native Americans used to watch their kids sleep at night and close their mouth if they were mouth breathing at night, because you are brought on earth to breathe through your nose. And that's what the purpose of your nose is, to cleanse your air and everything. And all of this relates to brain health and all of your health. But they would close their mouths and train them to breathe through their nose. And we know as society, like everyone now has problems of sleep apnea, have problems with snoring. And all of it is linked to damaged brain health, not being able to process your toxins in your body. Because when we talk about livers and kidneys and things like that, it's most notable for cleansing your body, but nobody really thinks about the brain. And the brain actually cleanses toxicity that's accumulated from external factors or internal, meaning you've ingested it while you sleep at night. And if you're not breathing properly, or you're not getting the right amount of sleep, or you're not eating the right diet or taking care of your brain, all of those things are at risk. So there's so much to unpack here, but at the end of the day, like just waking up, and what we like to offer is, did you ask yourself, is this going to harm my brain or is this going to help my brain? And if you just go throughout your day with those two simple questions, you can start to lead a healthier brain life, in addition to anything that we hope to inspire or teach more of to help people, what we call, be mavericks for their brain health.
Wow. Mind blown in the first 10 minutes of this interview already, Troy. I mean, that's just fascinating. And what strikes me is how we as a society, Western society, we view ourselves as so advanced, right? We can send and put men on the moon. We're sending men, rocket ships to Mars, and putting, telescopes up to look at the deepest portions of the sky in the universe, right? Yet our school system is so antiquated that I recognize that once we were back in the agriculture age and we shifted into the industrial age, we needed people to work in the factories, et cetera, et cetera. And so the schools were created and designed to teach the people from the farms to go and work in the factories. They didn't want them to think. They didn't want to do anything but follow orders, memorize things, right? The steps, the processes that you are required to build the things, to the machines that they're going to send out into war, and, all of those things that the factories were created for. And yet here we are, decades later, the schools still serve much the same function. You're not taught to think. Independent thinking is clearly not desirable in school. Creative thought is certainly stifled. I mean, yeah, you have music classes and you have art and dance perhaps, but it's still very structured. You're not allowed to do your own thing. You've got to sing this or you've got to play that. And, if you try and play it your own way, you get slapped around and you get a D, right? Because you decided to jazz up, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, right? Play it a little bit different, right? And it's fascinating that what you're talking about is the power of the brain, the function of the brain, and the importance of the brain in our lives. I mean, it's everything. And yet we don't, gosh, it's frustrating just sitting here because it's like, what can we do? I mean, we cut open frogs and those kinds of things, and we learn about biology and those kinds of stuff, but we don't spend a lot of time studying the human brain at all, or, the what happens when you don't take care of it. And that's why we have kids. And I used to do this too, right? We go out and party, right? Because that's what you do. And you go to spring break and you party and you kill a bunch of brain cells and those kinds of things with alcohol. And now I hear you saying that we don't actually develop the prefrontal cortex until well after, for females, 25 years old, and many to even later. So I'm guessing that some men, Troy, never develop the prefrontal cortex. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I mean, they say that the development ends, I think, at age 25. But depending on where you are with your brain reserve curve, and so this is a really fascinating thing that we love to teach people. And if you go out to Brain Mavericks, you can actually watch me go through my own as a personal story. But when you're born, the point of what your mom's brain reserves were and how your mom led their life before you were born starts your brain reserve curve. So if your mom is taking care of her brain and her diet, then that translates into your reserve curve. And of course, like, your dad plays a role in there too, but your mom mostly. And so that's why they try to teach mothers, like, what you do during pregnancy and leading up to pregnancy matters for the life of your child. But from there, all the moments that lead up to where you get to in your life deplete and or improve your brain reserves. And so if you go through a journey like I did, which is nobody ever talked to me about eating right. So I grew up in a family that we ate fast food all the time and on the go. We used to eat food on a dinner, on a TV tray in the living room, watching TV, not having conversations with anybody. Most of it was not healthy. And we were always on the go. I played 3 sports, like you mentioned, had 3 concussions. One of them knocked out on a football field, woke up in a hospital. Those are not good things, and so all of that starts to deplete your brain reserves. And I'd like to think that kind of leads into people to making decisions and or experiencing feelings of depression or any other type of brain dementia type disorder, because we don't actually make a change until a change is needed, right? Until we go in and we realize we don't change now. Well, where are we going to be? And so when I first learned about this brain curve and I went back and evaluated my story, and I share this on a video, it's crazy because I did everything to actually hurt my brain from the moment I was born until the age of 28, let's call it. And then more better for me in my brain health into my 30s when I discovered Dr. Daniel Namen's work. But when you think back to school systems, not only do they teach a lot of foundational life principles, which is something that we love to teach our kids. I actually, I created a laminate card for both of my older sons that has 10 life principles that they have to go through on a daily basis. That's not covered in school systems, including nasal breathing, eating right, sleeping the optimal amount of sleep, time outside, getting actual amount of sunlight, activity, steps, and things like that. Everything that gets kind of brushed over and or doesn't get talked about at all in school systems. And so they go through that what I call life principles chart and check it off. And then we have conversations at night. But that's one thing that we want to get back and help educate not only parents, but get kids excited about, because sky is the limit, but they have to be able to give themselves the potential to be able to do that, right? They have to be able to learn how to grab onto that and make decisions to help their brain. And what I was sharing with my 10-year-old yesterday is like the environments that you grow up in help shape your life for the future. Because if you think about it, even dating back to when you're first born, like a baby opens their eyes, they don't know anything. So they're using their eyes as inputs, right? You're reading faces, you're understanding what your environments are. It's the same thing when you're a kid. Like every environment that you grow up in, you're learning where you fit, how that fits in with your own life. What does that mean for education, the choices that you're going to make? And so if we can get in there from day one and start teaching kids to breathe properly, to get the right amount of sleep, to eat nutritious food, not, frankenfoods from a packaged good, then we can slowly get them on a path where they will have an optimal choices to make that will only exponentially give them every dream that they want in life. And they don't have to start from hitting the bottom. And it doesn't mean that they're going to not have failures. It just means that they're setting the table for themselves to be able to actually go through those learning moments and persevere past that, and hopefully tap into their conscious and their subconscious mind to be able to make the best of whatever environments that they're at.
Wow, Troy, what a beautiful and important initiative. I love the way that you're training and bringing up your children, because obviously you've studied this and you're an expert at it. And so you know that you can make differences in your children's lives that your parents were unaware of, right? It's like my parents were unaware of. And so it's not necessarily our parents' fault. Was this information available? Perhaps to some degree. I'm sure that not to the level that it is now, because I know Dr. Daniel Amen, although he's, this is his life's work, it wasn't until recently in the last decade or so that at least we've seen his studies and his programs and those kinds of things. So I know they didn't exist in the 40s and 50s when my parents were growing up, right? Not that they would have found their way to it anyway, I'm pretty sure, but I know that these things take time, and it takes, many, many mistakes for humans to make mistakes before someone like you and Dr. Amen and some of the other brilliant minds of the world make us aware that, hey, we've been doing it wrong all these years, right? All these decades, and the time to fix it is now. One of the challenges that I know that you're probably facing, Troy, is that, you're talking about teaching kids in school and changing the programs and letting them know that breathing and sleeping and sports activities may not be the optimum for them, and nutrition being most important. But yet we're fighting, because my wife and I believe in everything that you're talking about. We've been studying it for years ourselves for our own personal lives, especially the nutrition side of things. We've changed our diets, oh my gosh, over the last decade so drastically from the way we used to eat, and we know and we sense and we feel the impact that's made on our lives. And it's sad when we go and we see, other family members chowing down on, non-French fries and chicken nuggets and, things that, like you said, Frankenfoods. And that brings up my next question to you is that how do we deal with, or how are you dealing with, not that it's your sole responsibility, but how are you dealing with the 800-pound gorilla out there, which is the consumer brands, right? These fast food chains that are just pounding us with, you talk about, we have 75 to 80,000 thoughts per day. Well, we're probably getting 250 to 500,000 ads per day thrown in our face about this burger and that sandwich and this fry and that fried thing. How do we deal with that?
In short, curiosity. And that's what we can learn to teach our kids and ourselves, because anytime that we have excessive amount of information that's coming our way, we're always going to accept what we don't question. So we try to teach our kids, ask questions first, and not so much to judge people and or information that they see, but in a way that they ask a curious question about whether or not it actually makes sense. Does it make sense to them? And how can they find the best truth and the information that's out there? But like you said, like there are billions spent, and even sadly enough, like there are millions of dollars spent to hire people to write propaganda just to keep people in certain places. And I know that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But so the best thing that we have done is I empower my kids to make their own choices. So one thing that my wife and I made sure that we were never going to do is say, this is the way that we're going to eat. This is the way we're going to live. And this is what you have to do. So what we decided is that we were going to provide the education, and then we were going to empower our kids to make the choice. And so in other words, when they step into a friend's house, a school system, wherever, and it doesn't really have great foods or promote good foods, we allow them to make the choice with the education that they have. And it's been proven example time after time, which is we noticed years ago that food dyes would cause behavioral problems in one of our youngest. And so we shared that education with him. We talked about it. We even talked about instances where he had it and then the behavior that he had so he could visualize what happened during those moments. And then he goes to school and we let him choose. when his teacher offers him candy, he would choose whether or not he got to eat it for himself, not mom or dad's making this decision. And so what we would get is parents would email or teachers would email us and say, hey, Trevin is telling us that he can't have, Skittles or Starburst in class because of food dye. Is there any other treats that we could maybe bring in for him to give? And so that was the moment where we realized, like, excellent, like Trevin actually is sticking up for himself when we're not in the room. And we feel like that is the best way to guide yourself in a society that continually pumps out propaganda and promotion of poor foods. And so I trust that my kids understand the decisions that they're making, even if they choose to eat foods that are not healthy or high in sugar. They know what the consequence is of them doing that, and they're okay with that decision, knowing mom and dad are not going to do that. And so that's the way that we implore it. Now, educational wise, I always teach no judgment, no shame, meaning they're going to recognize kids bring lunches to school that have, and I have sat in class actually visually seen this, Pop-Tarts for lunch, followed by, chips as their snack and candy. And that's what their lunch is, right? Let alone like the foods they buy in a cafeteria. Their own lunches are terrible. And so the one thing that we do is we never have our kids actually place shame, blame, and those conversations. If they are wanting to help and empower, then they can ask a question, or they could say, hey, did you know like that Pop-Tart's got like 50 grams of sugar in it? And leave it at the question mark, and let the kid come home, ask the parent, talk about it with their parents. And then we can do our job to continue educating outside that medium. So that's how we've chosen to explore, knowing that it is an uphill battle, and it's a battle that we're going to continue to fight. But there are incredible people out in this world, like you and Alethea, and everybody else that we are connected with that is out there to help. And I think we're heading in the right direction.
Man, if we were in an arena, you'd be receiving a standing ovation right now, because talk about a hero, right? I mean, you are a true hero as a parent, as a entrepreneur, as a business leader, as an educator. Your mission on this planet is to educate, and you've chosen to educate in this arena. Now I understand why you were so passionate about Snappier and Farm Brigge, which are your two agricultural companies. I had always wondered how you got into it. Now I know the backstory, and it's just such a beautiful journey, how you're putting all these pieces together. Again, as I said in the introduction, not just for you and your family, although your kids are truly the beneficiaries of your education. But then it's the ripple effect. They're going out and they're impacting, obviously, the teachers. Now the teachers are starting to think, well, if it's bothering Trevin, maybe it's not good for any of the other kids in here too, right? And so I can't just bring a special treat in for him, like fresh fruit or whatever, and leave the other kids, dangling with the Skittles and bouncing off the walls by, 1 in the afternoon. So you're making an impact there. You're making an impact with the kids, with their peers. And I know this is the hardest part probably for them when they go to somebody else's house whose parents have no awareness of what you and your wife have concerning proper nutrition and health and brain health and those kinds of things. And that's got to be tough on the kids. Have they experienced any kind of challenges like that where they're being ridiculed or bullied, right? For, Trevin doesn't eat Skittles, who you think you're badass or something? Poor guys, has he been through stuff like that?
I don't think so. So maybe it's because the way that hopefully the way that we raise our kids is to be leaders. And we've heard that from the teachers, where kids actually in school look up to them. And so, we're talking pretty heavily about food health and choices and stuff like that. But in its essence, like, I'd like to think that we are teaching our kids to grow up and lead by influence as a leader. And so therefore, whether they make that choice or not, people look up to them. And we're starting to see that in school. And so they haven't had that experience. Now, I will say, like, there are times when Kellen will come home, who's our oldest, and say, "Hey, I didn't really eat the greatest at so and so's house, or I chose to eat such and such at school today, or whatever." But then he'll come home and he'll say, "I'm just gonna eat a salad for dinner because I don't think my choices were great today." I didn't even say anything, and I said, "Okay, Kellen, that's great, man." And so I think that that's an important principle here too, which is like there are going to be times when you enjoy certain foods, and if you're surrounded by them, sometimes that's just going to happen. But I think it's being okay with that and knowing what the next step forward is. And so I guess really to answer your question is like if they are feeling like that, they haven't at least shared that with me as a problem, and it hasn't become a problem for their choices because now they make their own lunches and the food they put in their lunches is incredible. And I don't do anything anymore. They make that choice.
Wonderful, wonderful. I can envision perhaps the kids. I mean, this is just me thinking out loud that, your kids at their young age would form some sort of a company where they're now creating lunches, for schools and for other kids. And so, yeah, that would be a fun thing to do. There's, like you said, we're just unpacking so much here. I mean, we're talking about parental decisions. We're talking about programming that you get from being in the womb, right? From your mother's experiences and whatever she's experiencing through the pregnancy starts formulating your brain. And this is why, as we teach in the personal development world, that from the day we're born up until we consciously make the decision to do something different, we're constantly being programmed about who we are, who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to think, and those kinds of things. And if our parents don't know, they're not aware, and so they abuse us, they mistreat us. We're sexually abused, we're physically abused, we're mentally abused. We're told, as in my case, since the age of 4, you're good for nothing. Actually, my full name was absolutely good for nothing. And I lived with believing that until I was 17 and beyond. And it took several attempts at suicide to figure out that I wasn't good for nothing. I'm good at a lot of things. And so I've spent the rest of my life proving it and disproving what my parents had programmed me with. But then I also learned that it's because they were programmed to believe that way about themselves. And physical violence was their way of showing love, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but those are subjects we could dive into. We could talk about these for days. And Troy, you've highlighted some very important issues about the negative experiences and the negative consequences that can result to our brains as a result of sports, not breathing properly, nutrition. And before we leave our audience thinking, oh my gosh, that's it, my life is over, I'm doomed, right? Is there anything that can be done to reverse some of these, some of these conditions that we've created on ourselves?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just thanks for sharing that about yourself too. Just letting that sink in for a minute. So thank you. And I think it's important to go back to my childhood and then to where I'm at now, because I think it's easy to say for those that grow up with parents that are educated in any of these spaces, they have a leg up. But that's not where you have to start from. And I think you sharing your story and what I'm about to share now means that, and I truly believe this, you're not stuck with the brain you have today, tomorrow, the next day. You have a choice to make. And so, and Dr. Daniel Amen and a lot of the SPECT imaging and the work that he does has proven that. Clinical studies have proven that. Even super athletes with TBI or traumatic brain injury have reversed their memory loss completely with some of the programs and stuff they just went through. So just let that sink in for a minute. Like that, it's okay. Wherever you're at is okay. And so, for me, it really started at birth for me. I nearly died when I was born. Umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. And luckily I had my grandma in the room as a nurse that kind of flagged something was wrong and saved my life. And so when I practice gratitude in the morning, which I'd encourage everybody to do, I make sure that that's part of it, because that now I'm here on earth and I can do my best to be the good human and share that with other people. But from there, that stemmed in a whole bunch of problems. I had ear surgeries, eye surgeries, everything before I was even age 10. And so my eyes were so bad. I had huge bifocal glasses, and you know, like today's world of Warby Parkers, where you can get these awesome specs and glasses are probably not even thought of, people wearing them. But back then, like if you had glasses and they were this, you know, thick bifocal ones, you got picked on. And so when I was a kid, I have vivid memories of basically kids bullying me verbally, actually taking my glasses off my face on the bus and stomping on them. I remember crying home from school many days, my parents not knowing what to do. School was not a safe place for me. So the only thing that I had going for me in my life was my dad was an athlete, and I'd like to think that's probably where I got some of that ability and some of the training. Is he played minor league baseball, and so I grew up playing three sports, and I was a decent athlete, and so people looked up to me because I was good at sports. But it wasn't my appearance that didn't save me at all, and so. What I learned at an early age, though, was how to channel that into kindness, because I would soon help others that would be bullied in school. Like, for example, on the playground, I would invite kids that don't know how to play football at all. I would be a captain and I would pick them first, and all my friends would be like, "Why would you pick so and so?" Like, and it's because I was trying to lift them up. And so I had learned at a young age that I could do that. I could leverage my heart and do that, but it was difficult. It was very difficult. And that's just the emotional trauma part of damaging your brain, right? We talk about physical and actually hitting your brain, but emotional trauma too. And so that wasn't safe for me. But the other thing that I used to share in schools before we move on to later and poor diet, was this concept of perspectives of bullying. And I think this fits for many different facets of life around difference in opinion or world perspectives, which is to ask a better question. Because I would soon learn, like, there was bullying programs out there. They would talk about bullying. Most of them would be a shaming or shunning way to shut a bully out. But it was never about asking the question, because what I would soon learn, and what I practiced even as a kid but didn't know it then, was if you ask the right question, I believe the bully and the victim of bullying are coming from a similar place. And what I mean by that is insecurity, meaning one person is not comfortable with themselves, maybe in a confidence way, and the bully is not comfortable with themselves because of maybe a broken home. And so I would later in high school end up dating one of my biggest bullies when I was a kid, because I learned more about her. I learned that she grew up with a father that was very verbally and physically abusive, and she wasn't safe. And her way to feel safe at school was to put others down. And so I think we would find that out by most things if we just were a little bit more curious and we taught that in schools. And so I would actually travel around speaking about that in schools to get people to ask better questions. So jump kick a little bit further into that journey. I went into college. I got a degree in finance, all on the way eating poor diets, fast food, high sugar foods. The only thing that was keeping me somewhat healthy was being active. But ultimately landed a career job in corporate, spent 10 years in corporate, did a lot of great things, built some culture programs for a $2 billion company, slowly learned about how I love to help people, but then hit a severe form of depression. And it's sad to say that, because we had just had our first child, and I have a beautiful wife, amazing wife, and love being a dad, but never loved talking about what I did at work. And it came to the point where I was literally like back against the wall, depressed, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. And so these are the moments where it helps to have somebody there for you, because I think resilience of pushing through and having a great brain will help you jump through that, but also having people around you to get you through that. And, you know, I thank my wife every day for basically in a blunt way saying, well, what are you going to do about it? Get your ass up and find out what you want to do in life. And that's kind of what jump started me into, okay, well, I care about gifting education back to others, bullying and speaking. And I care about food health, because we were just getting into how can I feed my body the right foods. So I share all of that because it's one thing to say that you grow up in a perfect environment and a great way to grow your brain and nasal breathing and everything like that. But most people don't start from that. And most people have a journey that they go through, and it's okay wherever you're at. So I share this with you, and hopefully it inspires those that are in any tough times, whether you're an adult or you're a teenager, or maybe you're a child trying to figure your way. There is an opportunity for you. And it starts with some of the choices that you make, starting with your brain health and your diet. But then most importantly, being more curious for yourself. And I am excited every day to get up with the opportunity to be able to inspire some people to do that, to make that choice, to be able to live the life of their dreams. And it's really just a few simple choices away.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you watching this interview and for those of you listening to this interview on our podcast, you just received a lesson on how to share your heroic story. As I mentioned in the beginning, the Voices of Impact Awards was created as a platform for you, for the everyday individual, not for the professional speaker, but for the everyday individual, whether you're a CEO, a doctor, a lawyer, a first responder, police officer, a healthcare worker, beautiful nurse, a surgeon, and you've never really toyed with the notion of going out and building a public speaking career, or writing a book or anything, but yet you've been through some stuff. You've been through some challenges and you've been through some experiences that you've learned things from. And we've built that platform for you so you can come and share your story. And many of you are probably thinking, Steve, I wouldn't even know where to begin. And I want to remind you that our guest Troy here didn't come on here to tell a story. I didn't ask him, Troy, tell us a story. I asked him a simple question about his subject matter expertise. And in order for him to beautifully and articulately answer that question, he led us into the story. And I was clinging to every word he said. I was taken in by his experience as a child about being bullied, about the Coke bottle glasses, about them being stomped on in the bus, and him frustrated and his parents frustrated, not knowing what to do. I felt that deep within, and it builds even stronger the connection that I already had to Troy. And so this is what I want to highlight to you, is just that simple. In the 5-6 minutes that he shared that story, he created impact in me. And I know that he's created impact in you because I'm just like you, right? And so if it moved me, I know it's moving you. So go to voicesofimpactawards.com, apply to tell your story. We'll teach you how to do it. And what you didn't know up to this point is that Mr. Troy Rice is one of your mentors in that program. So when you sign up and you enroll and participate to share your story on the Voices of Impact Awards, you're going to receive mentorship. Much of it is free mentorship. If you want to work one-on-one with Troy, you can do that as well. And now you have every reason to, because you can see that he's an absolute master at his craft. And more than that, because there's a lot of people that are masters at their craft and in their subject matter experts. But more than that, you can feel Troy's heart. You can feel his passion for wanting to help you. And this is the way he is to everybody. Since I met him, he's been that day. Troy's never been, let's see what I can get from Steve and Alethea. Troy's always been, what can I give? And how much more can I give? Because I feel that what I've given so far is not enough. And we're like, who is this guy? He's a superhuman. I wish, Troy, that you were in the cloning industry, because I would like to clone you and send you out into the world and put, 1 billion Troy Rices out there, because we need more people like you. And so first of all, I want to thank you for your time here with us today. I know we only have you for a few short minutes, but this isn't the end. We're going to bring Troy back for additional interviews, and Troy is also offered to lead a workshop on brain health for the people that actually apply and enroll in the Voices of Impact Awards. And so we'll be setting that up shortly, and we'll be sending out announcements to your email addresses to let you know when that'll be. And you will not want to miss that, because this is a master educator. He's a master instructor, as you've seen in that short time that he's been with us here today. And Troy, now that I've let the cat out of the bag, that you are one of the official resource partners of the Voices of Impact Awards, you're going to give a free gift to anybody that visits our website and goes to your page on our site. Tell us about that free gift.
Yeah. So I'd love to offer a one-on-one coaching package for anybody that signs up. And most importantly, I know it takes, a little bit of strength to share your story. And I want to help you build the best brain possible to be able to do that. So I'm excited to do that. And I know Steve was alluding to it earlier. I'd love to at least take a minute here and share a couple tips for you on here. Simple tips just to help you. So we did talk about brain health, food health, and nasal breathing. When it comes to nasal breathing, really just think about whether or not you go throughout your day with your mouth open, or if you're breathing through your nose. That's really step one. To get a little bit more in depth with it, you can leverage nasal breathing to actually calm anxiety by plugging your nose and pacing back and forth. And let's say just start with 10 steps and then breathing back through your nose. That's a simple way to start to get a hold of any anxiety that you have. Closing your mouth and breathing through your nose throughout the day helps with nasal breathing at night, which will also reduce snoring and sleep apnea. So that's an amazing thing. Leveraging both. There's a practice that we like to call focus and meditation, where, today everybody's focus is just being grabbed, right? Attention this, attention that. And so in 10 minutes or less, you can practice a meditation where you sit in a comfortable place, focus on nasal breathing only, and think about taking 4 count breaths in and 4 count breaths out plus. And so that, in other words, I would say at least 5 or 6 out, and focus on doing that. Just count. And actually, it's been proven to improve your focus, because 50% of the average person's day is spent mind wandering. So if you ever have been called out for daydreaming, don't be afraid, or don't feel guilty about it, because majority of us spend our days daydreaming. It's just what our mind does. But if you practice something like that, where you sit in a comfortable place and you practice counting your breaths in through your nose, out through your nose, in for a count of 4, out for a count of 5, and do that for 10 minutes and just focus on counting, your mind will wander, bring it back. It will actually bring better focus to you in your life. And so there's a couple of quick tips around brain and breathing.
Outstanding. Give us a couple of nutrition tips that we can immediately put into action if we want to.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a bunch of powerful spices. I like to go to spices because very easy to add to any food or dinner plate. But turmeric and cocoa powder and sage are exceptional for brain health. They all help promote blood flow, which is awesome because, all of us really, or I shouldn't say all of us, many of us like to enjoy coffee or caffeine. And coffee actually has been studied a lot, linked to great things around cognitive health. But one thing that it does because of caffeine is it can restrict blood flow a little bit. And so the way that I like to enjoy coffee is I will put a little bit of turmeric, cocoa powder, and a little bit, actually I put clove and cinnamon in it too. But it helps with blood flow and inflammation. So that's a quick spice tip for anybody. The other thing I'll offer here, and this one's awesome because most of us, or I'll just say a majority of Americans at least, love to enjoy certain foods, whether that's, sandwiches, pizzas, breads, pastas, ice creams. The order of which you eat your food matters. And so a lot of our inflammation is caused from glucose spikes from sugar and fructose. And so how we eat our foods actually matters. So if you're going to enjoy that ice cream, try to eat something with fiber and fat and protein before you eat the ice cream. And that's why a lot of people you'll hear say, yeah, well, I'd like to eat a salad before I eat my meal. There's a lot to that because salad offers a certain fiber compound that actually casts a net. So inside your gut, that's what fiber acts as, is a net from allowing fructose spikes and glycemic index spikes throughout your body that cause inflammation. So learn to leverage that, especially if you want to eat powerful foods like that. So if you're going to eat toast or bagel, try to put avocado in front of it, put the fat in front of it. And so that's an awesome tip. If you're really struggling with inflammation, gluten and dairy are huge in regards to that. And so one thing I offer around that, and I talk a lot about it at home, because if my wife struggles with headaches and migraines, and one of the most linked things to migraines is gluten intolerances. And so I offer that to anybody that just, enjoys breads and pastas and all that, is if you feel bloated, inflamed, lethargic, fatigued, headaches, it could be a result of excessive gluten cycles in your body. And so it's one thing to say, I ate a bagel in the morning and then I ate healthy the rest of the day, because your body knows what to do. It will get rid of the inflammation. It'll reset, especially if you fast, it will reset yourself. But what happens is most of us will do a bagel for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, pizza for dinner. And whenever you do that, you're cycling inflammation throughout your body and your body can't keep up. So give your body the gift of resetting if you want to enjoy some of those foods.
Those are beautiful tips, Troy. And I think that, it makes sense now that your last name is Rice, because you're a food expert. But ladies and gentlemen, what Troy's sharing with you is, I think, listen to your body, right? Because he says that if you eat bagel for breakfast or toast for breakfast, Pop-Tart for breakfast, whatever, pizza for lunch, and then you have a sandwich for dinner or vice versa, and you're constantly just feeding gluten, listen to how you feel. Right? He said, are you lethargic? Are you fatigued? Are you having headaches? Are you having, dizzy, not being able to focus and those kinds of things? That's your body trying to tell you that it's toxic, and it's trying to eliminate those toxins or warn you that, wait a minute, we're going off the deep end here and you need to slow down and pay attention to that. I also want to mention that Troy is not a doctor. I'm not a doctor, although I've played one on TV and sometimes on Facebook. But Troy's done a lot of research on this, right? This is his, lives it day in and day out, and he has for a number of years. He studied it. He's a certified brain health expert through the Amen clinics, and that's not something that everybody can achieve. Troy has done it. And so he knows what he's talking about, but regardless of whether he was or he is a doctor, which, like I said, he's not, regardless of whether he was the top surgeon in the world, which he's not, do your own research, right? Don't take my word for it. I love Troy, but don't take his word for it, because we want you to do like he teaches his kids. Make your own decisions.
Absolutely.
But make your own decisions based on facts, not based on what the media is telling you, not based upon what the, big, powerful food franchises are telling you that, hey, come on in for $1.99 and we'll feed your entire family for the rest of the year kind of food. Do your own research, right? Check out the things that Troy is telling you, and you'll see that it is scientifically backed, that's medically backed, and then make the decision for yourself. You can choose not to. You can choose to continue living the life that you choose to live. No one's going to tell you what to put in your mouth. That's fine. Live the life that you want to live. We're just here to give you information to help you elevate if you choose to do that, or to continue the path that you're on if you choose to do that too. Zero judgment, zero criticism. It's your life. Enjoy it, right? And do with it what you will. I'm just so grateful that we get to have Troy Rice as part of our official resource partner program. Troy, and I'm sad for you, because with the stories that you have and the stories that you shared, I think that you could probably win the Voices of Impact Awards grand prize, but too bad because now you're disqualified from it. And we wouldn't be able to vote for you anyway because we know you too well and we're insiders. So, but just what a beautiful time we've had with you today. Just thank you for sharing from your heart, sharing your wisdom. And I know you have lots more to share, and we're going to bring you back. So I'm just overjoyed with our experience with you today. Any final comments or advice that you might have for somebody considering wanting to share their story they've never had before? Perhaps it's going to open up some painful wounds, memories, or perhaps it's going to awake some dreams that have been, put on the back burner for many years, as sharing stories often do. What kind of advice do you have for someone like that to encourage them to step up and make the decision to join us?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the choice we never make is the choice that we always regret, right? And so one thing I like to share on this is, like, if you think about people that write books, there's often times where books are written when somebody's well into their 70s or their 80s. And it's because they had a story to share. They never had a chance or a choice that they made to imprint that legacy on somebody else. Because I would say we all have a responsibility to really gift something back in this world. And that's why we're here. So if you look at it less from a perspective of being fearful and how you're going to deliver that message, but instead of actually, what is my responsibility to deliver this message to the world so that people in this world can move forward, I think you'll find the empowerment to make the choice. So choose to take on that responsibility because you are great and somebody's willing to listen.
There you have it. I mean, what more needs to be said? You heard it from the wise man, Troy himself. Just beautiful, beautiful advice, Troy. I never really thought that most people that are in their, late 60s and 70s and they write a book, right? These are stories and this is information that should have been delivered much earlier, right? But we don't get to that point. We don't get to that point thinking that we matter until it's later in our years, when the truth is that I've learned just as much from you or more than I have in the years that, I've been studying personal development and nutrition and those kinds of things. And in the short time that I've spent here with you today, I've learned, so you guys don't think I'm kidding. You can't see it. It's why is it whited out? Anyway, there's a whole page of notes there. It's the whole page is full. Even there, the margins there. Now you can see a little bit of it. If I angle it just right, there you go. See? Full page of notes. I'm not kidding, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. There's this funny saying, Steve, I think that is, before your age, 25, you worried about what everybody thinks of you. From age like 25 to 40, you starting to realize that there's nobody thinks about you. And then when you reach 45 to 60 or older, you basically wake up and you say, nobody gives a damn about me, so I'm going to do whatever I want. So like there's this age range where you go through this cycle, but really at the end of the day, like, your story was meant to be shared early on. It's just you go through these mental games until you get to the point where you're ready, but you can be ready earlier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We all matter. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And we need to hear it now more than ever. So, Troy, again, so grateful for you and your time. We will be in touch, my friend. We'll be, in constant communication as our applicants come on board and they want to train with you. Ladies and gentlemen, go to voicesofimpactawards.com /Troy Rice. And that's where you're going to be able to read and learn more about him. You're going to be able to access his free gift. And for those of you that choose to apply to the Voices of Impact Awards, you're going to be able to get a complimentary training from Troy. And I'm going to give you a fair warning that his time is very, very valuable. So even though he's offering a one-on-one coaching package, you better get to it fast, because we're going to have so many people applying and wanting to work with Troy that he's just not humanly capable of dealing and getting to everyone. So if you want time with Troy, better do it now. Parting words, Troy?
Thank you, Steve. Always grateful to be on camera with you or to see and have a conversation with you. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Wonderful, sir. We are looking forward to getting to Grand Rapids and sharing some salad with you guys.
Awesome.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Troy.
All right. Thanks, Steve.